Hello and welcome again to another episode of the Bitcoin News Show. I am your host, Vortex, and you guys are right here on the World Crypto Network YouTube channel, one of the best places to find information and news about cryptocurrencies. We have an amazing show for you guys today, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about AsicBoost, USAF, LiteCoin popping, and Bitcoin possibly hitting $500,000 a coin. I have an amazing panel as usual today, guys. I'm very excited about everybody here. We just go right down the line. First, we got John Light. How you doing, John?
Doing great today. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. Glad to finally have you on the show. We tried to get you last time, but I was sick, so sorry about that. Really glad to have you on this episode. We got Renegade Investor joining us again, one of the greatest Bitcoin YouTube video maker of all time. How you doing? Oh, you're muted.
Man, that's pretty flattered, but yeah, thanks for having me back on. It's great to be back on.
Yeah, man, you guys got to check out his YouTube videos. Really awesome. Then we got Sam Wouters on here, another Bitcoin enthusiast, Bitcoin speaker, Bitcoin consultant. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing well, thanks. Glad to be back.
And finally, we have our special guest for today, Mr. Fluffy Pony, Ricardo.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah. How you doing, man?
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. We only have you on the show. We scheduled you a little while back there, so I'm glad everything still worked out pretty good. We already got 70 viewers on the show, so let's just start right out with the topics. All sorts of controversy in the Bitcoin land these days, people. You know, it's never a dull moment in Bitcoin. You know, I don't think most people realize that who've just gone into the space that Bitcoin is always on fire, going down a hill at 90 miles an hour. Like it's always on fire. Just like the early days of the internet, everything is about to. The end of the world is about to come every day for Bitcoin, and so it's really exciting to be in the space. First thing we're going to talk about is the AsicBoost. So basically, this week we saw a ton of controversy over the allegations of Bitmain secretly using a technical advantage referred to as AsicBoost for mining up to 30% faster than the competition. And I want to know, from the Bitmain, really doing this? Are they really doing this? And if so, like, how can we stop them as a network? And should we stop them? So we'll go through first, Ricardo. What do you think about this AsicBoost and USAF?
It's been an interesting few days. I was sort of, not skeptical of the conclusion that Greg Maxwell came to, but you sort of want to corroborate it of your own accord. And so went and did a bit of digging, and so did Thomas Vertlen from Electrum. And I mean, you can see evidence of blocks coming from mining pools, from Antpool in particular, where the ordering is definitely not ordered by fee, or fee priority. So you sort of like look at that and say, well, okay, these blocks are full of transactions that are oddly ordered or strangely ordered. So there's definitely some evidence of AsicBoost in the wild. What was interesting about that was that whilst I saw evidence of AsicBoost in the wild, and so did other people, there were like a bunch of people putting up blog posts, which seems to be the way to communicate things nowadays, saying, oh no, this is impossible for reasons. And that was kind of like, a little bit annoying, because I mean, I get it, everyone has an opinion, but just sort of like at least sort of back that opinion up with some sort of like technical look at block or the ordering of transactions in blocks, which is the key indicator. And we didn't see that. We saw a lot of people just sort of like throwing their weight around and saying, oh, as a miner, I think this and I think that, and this is how ASICs are developed. So yeah, sort of like looking back at it now, I think it's pretty clear that AsicBoost is supported by the chips, using whatever system or offloading whatever parts of the pool and whatever parts of the chip that they need to, and B, that this is in the wild and is being used by at least one pool.
Yep, and I believe they still continue to deny that. So we're gonna, only time will tell, and we'll see. But we'll talk a little bit more about it. But first, we'll go with Renegade Investor, Edward. What do you think about this? Is Bitmain really doing this? And what can we do to stop it?
Yeah, so I actually heard about this first one. I was traveling out to a Bitcoin conference on Friday, so I was listening to Tony and Jimmy Song on Mad Bitcoin. So from what I can take, I mean, I can't really clarify at the moment whether Bitmain is doing this. I'm going to wait for more information, because I think that's always the best thing to do. Wait for all the information to come out so we can properly collaborate that this is happening. But hypothetically, if it is, I thought of a good analogy today to describe what's happening and why the price is going up. So the way I describe it is that if Bitcoin mining was like a running race, if Bitmain is using the AsicBoost and they're getting 20 to 30% faster processing for using this algorithm on the ASIC chip, then it's almost like they're taking steroids in a running race. And so all the other runners in a race are going to be pretty pissed off if they get the advantage of being able to sort of inject steroids and do the 100 meters in, say, 9 seconds rather than like closer to 10. So the way I see it, in terms of the network stopping this from happening, one thing that I saw from Peter Todd was that AsicBoost is incompatible with most soft fork upgrades. So if the other miners want to stop the advantage that Bitmain has from using AsicBoost through the hardware, then they can implement obviously segwit, which will prevent that advantage. And I think that's why we've seen almost like a 4% rally from Friday, where it went from like 1180 to 1220 right now, is because investors could be looking at this situation and saying, well, it's now in the interest of all the other miners to implement segwit in order to take away the advantage from Bitmain. So I think whether Bitmain has definitely been doing this, the investors are starting to price in the fact that they could be, and that it's in the advantage of miners to start signaling more for segwit. And as we know, the majority of the network wants segwit as the optimal upgrade for scaling. And obviously for investors, scaling is one of the most contentious topics right now. If you're an institutional investor and you're going to drop 25, 50, 75 million into Bitcoin long term, you want to know first that this network really can scale at the base level and at a second layer level as well. So I think that's what's interesting about it. In regards to the activated soft fork, I'm actually leaning away from this right now, and that's because I really liked Jimmy Song's article the other day where he was talking about how the legislators in Bitcoin, the coders are like legislators in Bitcoin, the miners are like executives, and the end users are like the judiciary who vote on the changes and what they want to happen. And I really think that if you go to user-activated soft fork way, you do take, in the long term, you do take agency away from the miners, and the miners are going to have sort of two incentives to mine on the Bitcoin network, and that is one, the price, and two, that they have agency over which changes are made to the network. So I would rather see changes to the core protocol made without a user-activated soft fork and taking agency away from the miners. But I think, like Tony was saying on Friday as a finishing point, if it is only, say, 1 or 2 miners and say 10% of the hashing that is preventing the upgrade, then maybe then when you've got almost 90% consensus, then you may be able to do a user-activated soft fork then without upsetting that balance too much. But in terms of what happened on Friday, I think, yeah, the market's really taking this as bullish, and the price has really bounced.
Absolutely. I mean, we're sitting at over 1,200 right now, and I think that the Bitcoin land is loving that price. The market is definitely receiving the news well, because I believe panelists say, but to me, it seems like this is finally some closure. After wondering what the hell was going on, why are they wanting, empty block? Why are they mining empty blocks? Why are they threatening for a 75% hard fork? Why are they actively blocking SegWit and this protocol for upgrade for all of this time? And like, why are all these? Why are they supporting Bitcoin Unlimited inexplicably? Like, I'm not sure. So we'll go with John Light and see what he says. John, what do you think about the situation and the user activated soft fork and AsicBoost? Do you think that they're really doing this? And if so, like, how do you think we should stop them? John, you're still muted, John.
Yeah, I was trying to get the
you got it.
icons to drop down. It was just kind of lagging a little bit.
Thank you, Google.
Yeah, so I'm with the other commentators at this point that I would wait for substantial evidence that Bitmain is actually using it. The thing about covert usage of AsicBoost is that exactly it's covert, so it's actually very difficult to conclusively prove that they're using it. So what we do know is what Bitmain has admitted, which is that their chips do include support for this optimization that looks a lot like AsicBoost. I don't know that their optimization is the exact same as AsicBoost, but they've admitted that their chips have support for this optimization, but they claim that they haven't been using it. What's not clear is whether there is another company associated with them that could be using it, and so they're kind of weaseling out of saying that they're using it by saying Bitmain Tech isn't using it, but maybe like Bitmain Limited could be using it, or something like that. We just don't know. My personal opinion on this whole AsicBoost controversy is that I don't like patents. I don't think that government granted monopolies are beneficial for either society in general, and in particular Bitcoin and innovation in Bitcoin. I think if a miner is going to have a government granted privilege that gives them advantages over other miners, then that's something that people within the rest of the network need to act defensively against in order to preserve a relatively level playing field, or as level of a playing field as we can in the face of government intervention in this market. And so, and proposals, various soft fork proposals to kind of nullify the advantages of these patented optimizations, and I would be in support of enacting and activating these soft forks to nullify these patented advantages. But in general, I'm not opposed to optimizations. In the same way that we didn't, as a network, do anything to stop the transition from CPUs to GPUs to FPGAs to ASICs, I don't think that we should do anything to block further optimizations that increase miner efficiency, so long as those optimizations are freely available to all of the other miners. Unfortunately, that's just not the case with these patented optimizations that are currently out there. And beyond some of the soft fork proposals that have been put forward to block this particular optimization, there's this concept of a user-activated soft fork that you've brought up a couple of times, which is really a separate issue, because this is the momentum that's behind UASF right now is more about activating segwit, and nullifying this optimization is kind of just a side benefit of that, if you want to call it that. But I like to say that user-activated soft fork is like, it has like all of the difficulty of a hard fork and none of the benefits. So I think the only benefit is that it's backwards compatible with old nodes. But that, to me, that's not like a hugely important aspect of it, because people should be keeping their software up to date, frankly. And it has some risks that if the user-activated soft fork is ever undone by the miners, or the miners decide not to go along with it, then it could result in a seriously damaging chain split, and that could lose people a lot of money. And so I don't think that it should be taken lightly. And it's going to take like Bitcoin Core, I think, putting their official stamp of approval on it before it really gets a lot of traction amongst the nodes that really matter, which are the Bitcoin businesses and wallet providers that process millions or billions of dollars worth of transactions. So it remains to be seen whether we're actually going to see that support come from the economic majority or not.
Absolutely, and lots of good points in there. I mean, we do want to kind of like remind people that this user-activated soft fork, this is the nuclear option, right? This is because of its potential ability to split the coin, in two. If the miners didn't go along, it is the nuclear option.
Yeah,
I have it in place, right, John? I mean,
the nuclear option because I think the nuclear option is changing the proof of work.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose that would probably.
Yeah, that's more nuclear than nuclear.
That would be like totally starting your security base from scratch, right?
Yes. Okay.
What this really is the economic majority using their power, their economic power to not really coerce, but strongly miners to upgrade their software, or else the blocks that they mine are going to be worthless in the eyes of the economic majority. The thing is that all it takes is a few very liquid exchanges or wallet providers to hold out from the user activated soft fork to preserve value on the old chain, or the chain that's not compliant with the user activated soft fork. And so it could very easily be a very messy throwing around of economic might between a few major exchanges and wallet providers that have differing opinions about this. So again, it's really like all of the difficulty of a hard fork with none of the benefits, in my opinion. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, another good point is that we're all for optimizations, right? But it has to be an even playing field. It has to be optimizations for everybody, right? It can't just be for one single Bitcoin mining company. That's just not going to work. That's not consensus. That's not going to provide security. That's going to, introduce more centralization and more co-opting. We don't want that. We want Bitcoin mining to remain as decentralized as possible. And so, if we have to threaten a user-activated soft fork for these miners to adopt segwit, I guess we'll see how that plays out. But that seems to me that has to be there so that at least the miners can be kept in check, even if they go against consensus and try to do some kind of hard fork, like for example the Bitcoin Unlimited or something. We have to have that option there just so that they know that can be in place. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
John?
I mean, user-activated soft fork is not a new concept. It's been done before.
Yeah. Okay.
It just requires a very large, overwhelming majority of consensus, not only among the economic nodes, but ideally there's a lot of miners that have adopted it before it activates as well. So we'll see if it works or if it even goes forward. But I want to let Sam.
Yes.
I want to hear from Sam as well.
Me too. All right, Sam. So let's see, man. Sorry to keep everybody. It's funny. Somebody else has to go last. I don't want to make anybody last, but somebody else has to go last.
No problem at all.
Sam, tell us, man. What do you think about all this?
Yeah, I largely agree with the stuff you mentioned. One thing John said that he thought miners should, really the economic majority should be behind a user-activated soft fork, and that that's not really going to happen until Core gives a stamp on it. But I feel like that's not going to happen, at least not initially, because the Core developers don't want to put their stamp on it because that's immediately going to make it political and a lot of people against it. They really, from all the communication I've seen from them, want the users to take this up, show that they support a user-activated soft fork, step to the exchanges, tell them, guys, we really need this for the benefit of the network. And then Core might say, okay, we'll write the code, we'll make sure it's safe, but you guys have to do this. We can't be the ones in charge of this because then it's not user-activated. People will call it developer-activated soft fork or whatever. There
is a BIP 148, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that is that? I mean, that's from Core, right? So that's
Well, it's from Shaolin Fry, who's actually initially a LiteCoin developer, I believe, and it's not fully reviewed, etc., because they recently took out a bug as well. So they would really make sure it's super optimal to what it can be.
Okay, so yeah, just to be clear, then 148 is not from Core, so that's kind of not that's not something we can point to as a stamp of Core's approval.
Yeah. Then as for AsicBoost, I think what I didn't like about it is, I think Renegade mentioned it as well, we should wait for a bit more evidence out there. And what people immediately do is they jump to conclusions, they start accusing, they send out all of the tweets, make all of the posts with conclusions without really knowing that much. And I think it really doesn't help the situation when every single time there's the slightest hint of someone on the other side doing something you don't like is immediately firing at them. because people, like, they insult each other, they provoke each other, and that's really not going to get us any further. You're not going to convince someone to come to your side by calling them an idiot or calling them out on social media and upvoting and spamming everyone. What I thought was a good solution, actually, when Gregory Maxwell, he found a bug and he pushed out a potential solution for it, which doesn't include segwit. Like, it's just a fix for the hidden usage of AsicBoost, which I thought was a good way of putting it, because otherwise you're trying to force people to activate segwit without them actually wanting to, just to solve this problem. So I thought that was a very good way of handling it, and also immediately doing it and not waiting until the community starts nagging like, hey, can you provide this separate option to fix this one little problem and not do segwit too? So I thought that was a very good way of staying impartial about it and still solving the problem. And that's it for me, really.
Yeah, I agree there, definitely. Does anybody have any final points on this topic? I do, because you know, I don't want to turn this into Bitcoin Uncensored, but I do have to I do have to mention this tweet that I saw come across my Twitter sphere. You know, basically somebody said, you know, Bitmain essentially got, you know, caught in the bathroom, right, with lube and porn magazines, but said that they were not actually doing anything. So, you know, it is interesting to see like how much evidence that we have, and this ongoing debate about if they're actually going to, if they're being able to prove that they're actually doing this. And many people out there are offering little bits of evidence. BTC Drac had a couple of good tweets, and many people are seeing different anomalies and, you know, trying to put two and two together. But like you said, John, it is covert, right? So it's almost hard, it's almost impossible to say with authority that, hey, they are 100% doing this. But there's been all sorts of weird, strange things that, you know, that's been going on, like especially with these empty blocks and this kind of thing. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think that there are many in the community that are convinced that they actually are doing this, because it really does answer a lot of questions, you know, put a nice little bow on a bunch of different curiosities and questions that's been lingering out there. So we'll have to wait and see for more evidence. But very interesting stuff. Sorry, one more time. Does anybody have any final points on the AsicBoost before we move on to the next topic?
I think one thing to add to that wasn't mentioned is that Bitmain actually said that they used it on testnet, unless I misread that, or it wasn't like. Yeah,
they said that they did use it on testnet.
Yeah, that's what they said.
Yeah, that's the craziest part to me. Really.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, I mean, just to have it on, you know, just to have it in the chip at all. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Just to have it in the chip at all. So yeah, definitely interesting. So we're going to be keeping you guys up to date with that. You know, definitely follow us all on Twitter. All of these guys here have great Twitter accounts, and they'll be in the show notes for everybody to check out. So let's see. Let's move on to the next topic. Before we do that, we got 170 live viewer now, so thank you guys so much for joining us. We have a lot of people in the chat scrolling by. We have a great conversation going, so if everybody could hit the like button on that, or the dislike button if you guys don't like us, and hit the subscribe button to the World Crypto Network channel. I think we just got over like 9,000 subscribers or something. So it's
9,000.
That's right. I had to tweet that out. You know, that's the greatest meme of all time. So I even have that. I even have a T-shirt with that. So that I had to tweet that out for sure. So that was really cool. Over 9,000 for all the geeks out there. That all the anime geeks out there.
Close to 10,000. So that's very nice.
So that's awesome. So thanks so much, guys, for that. You know, we really love creating these videos for you. We really love, I mean, I love having a conversation about Bitcoin, and I love being able to share that with people. I definitely find it valuable to bring on new people all the time, and you know, even important people in the community to just get their thoughts. Like, that's kind of the goal of the show, is to just get everybody's thoughts on what's going on with Bitcoin at any given time. And we really love doing it. So please definitely support the show by, you know, hitting that like button and subscribing to the network. We're about to talk about the next topic here. I think we can move on. Yep. All right. So we're going to be talking about LiteCoin popping recently. So basically, LiteCoin has recently seen some two-year highs on the news that segwit may be activated. And so I want to hear from the panelists, like, do we think it's going to get activated, and what effect do we think this is going to have on Bitcoin? So first we'll go with Ricardo. And are we going to have segwit on Monero? Or I don't think Monero would support segwit. It's a whole different thing.
Yeah, you heard it here first. We're activating segwit on Monero, and it's going to be a user-activated hard fork. It's going to be tomorrow. Tomorrow is the flag day. And well, you know, I don't really care if no one's ready. We're doing it tomorrow.
Pump.
Pump that shit.
Whoop, whoop. Okay. Well, getting back to the topic at hand, I mean, I would personally like to see segwit activated on Litecoin for a number of reasons. Firstly, because I like Charlie Lee. I think Charlie's a clever guy. Oh, there goes my power again. Secondly, I think that over and above that, I think it would be an interesting testing platform, or at least an interesting platform to see segwit live in an environment that isn't testnet. At the same time, I'm kind of interested to see what happens if we get segwit activated on Lightning, but we don't get anything else on Bitcoin, and Bitcoin stays segwit free. And then like everyone's like, okay, well, you know, Litecoin has it, but Bitcoin doesn't. And now what do we do? Because now you've got code paths that diverge as well. So yeah, I'm sort of like looking at that and seeing what happens.
Very interesting. And we'll let you try to get that power back on or something right now while we move to the next person. He's in the dark. I'm telling you guys, the CIA does not want you guys watching the show. They're going to keep turning off the lights on everybody. So we'll go with John next on this, and then Sam. So first, John, what do you think about the Litecoin popping? And, you know, is it because of segwit? And what happens if they get segwit activated first?
Yeah, I don't try to pretend to know what's going on in the alt markets. You know, there's certainly a correlation, I will say, between, you know, segwit getting closer to activation there and the price going up. You know, further indication that they're related is the fact that, you know, when F2 Pool said that they weren't going to signal, the price dumped, and then, you know, Charlie Lee was like, oh, I talked to them and it's, you know, they're back on, and then, you know, the price goes back up. So, you know, I think there's certainly some correlation there. Some concerns from, I want to say it was one of the pool operators who was saying, you know, he's worried that if Litecoin, it was Chandler Guo, he said that if, you know, Litecoin activates segwit and Bitcoin code paths kind of diverge, and so he's worried about you know, how difficult it would be for Litecoin to continue like copying improvement forward. Charlie Lee came back and said that, you know, it's no problem. They have the
You're cutting out there, John. I think we lost your mic. No, can't hear you. So we'll let you fix that, and we'll go over to Sam, and then we'll go back to you. Oh wait,
1, 2, 3.
Oh, okay, I can hear you now, John. Sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, I don't know why that cut out. Sorry about that. But yeah, Charlie Lee came back and said, you know, hey, it's no problem. We'll be able to keep up with Bitcoin Core, and of course continue on our own, you know, development priorities. So, you know, maybe they'll get Chandler over to start signaling as well, and, you know, we'll see what ends up happening. But you know, I think ultimately Bitcoin Core is going to get past you know, some of the roadblocks that they're running into with their development roadmap, and you know, they'll either implement segwit or some other sort of malleability fix, and, you know, we'll see Lightning work in all of its full glory on Bitcoin before yet. Yeah.
Yep. Very interesting. We'll go with Sam next. What do you think about Litecoin?
I think like it wasn't actually Chandler Guo, or maybe he also said that, but it was actually Wang Chun from F2 Pool who said this. Like he said he was going to stop signaling for segwit on Litecoin like last minute because they were concerned that the projects would diverge too much and they wouldn't be able to keep up. And then Charlie Lee indeed said, no, we got this. Like, it's okay, we can handle this. What I think is really interesting is that there was one pool, I think one of the ones that doesn't want to signal, and they for segwit on Litecoin, and they said we don't really see any strong correlation between the recent price rise, as some people suggested, and the increase in segwit signaling. And everyone was like, what? This is the most stable altcoin for years. Like, nothing's happened whatsoever. Suddenly segwit signaling goes up and the price absolutely goes up like crazy. So that was kind of weird. And then someone mentioned in the chat, like, could you guys bring up the thing about Antpool boosting their mining power to try to stop SegWit from activating on Litecoin? And it's like, well, the numbers speak for themselves, I suppose. It's not like variance anymore if they really start upping their game in terms of hashing power. So there is definitely something going on there that you could say, okay, well, the price has gone up a lot, so maybe it's more profitable for them to be mining on Litecoin right now, so that's why they're doing it. So there's like, they could easily hide behind that sort of and say, like, we're not using it to stall this stuff, we're doing it to make more money. So again, it's hard to prove there, just like the AsicBoost stuff. But for most rational people, like, there's clearly something going on there which they aren't transparently communicating. But then again, they're just businesses and they want to make money. So,
yep, true, very true. Yeah, it is interesting though on that Litecoin has just gone for almost years now without any type of price change, and then SegWit gets close, and then bam. So yeah, so it's there's got to be some kind of market correlation there, because obviously there's a large part of the market that wants SegWit to be activated on Litecoin. Right now it's signaling like close to 70%, I think. So there's definitely some demand there. So we'll see how that plays out. It's going to be interesting to see. We'll go with renegade investor Edward next. What do you think about this, Edward?
Yeah, so I've been doing a lot of trading lately, so I've been following this side quite closely. But the Litecoin is pumping for two reasons. The first is that we've had a general altcoin pump over the last few months, especially after a long accumulation stage when altcoins bottomed out. And the reason for that is that a lot of people were hedging downside risk in Bitcoin with the fact that you got such a contentious situation with regards to scaling by going into alts, taking out cash hedges and taking speculative shorts. So that's one of the reasons why Litecoin has been pumping. The other reason is definitely people are speculating on SegWit approval. And the one thing you have to remember with these markets is the big events like halvenings and core upgrades to the protocols, they always get priced in before the event. So like we saw in 2016 with Bitcoin, the price was pumping right throughout sort of Q2 into Q3. And actually after the halvening, we only saw another sort of 2, 3, 4%, I think, before the price started to drop. So one thing to be aware of if you are trading this is that there's no telling how high Bitcoin could go. Like some people are guessing at the moment it could go to 0.08, 0.1. And that's possible, but you have to take into account that just because if SegWit is activated on Litecoin, it doesn't mean the price is going to keep going up. It could be a buy the new solar rumor event. But one of the most interesting things to talk about with regards to this is that a lot of people always look at the Bitcoin dominance index dropping and saying, look at all the problems with Bitcoin scaling. This is playing right into the hands of altcoins. But like we saw the other day, if you don't think these problems are going to happen with other coins, you are kidding yourself. And like we saw with the F2 pool, who have 25% of the hash rate in Litecoin, they are now playing games just like the miners in Bitcoin are doing by profiting from this upgrade to move the market. And one of the best tweets I saw on this was from Rocky, who's at Crypto Hustle on Twitter. And he said, this is exactly what they've been doing. Okay, so 1, accumulate cheap Litecoin. 2, signal for SegWit. 3, ride the pump up. 4, dump your coins. And then 5, stop signaling SegWit from activation. Now, if you've got a leverage short, when they stop signaling from activation, they can profit so much on the downside and then just flip their decision and then go back in. So you have to be aware that in all these markets, there are people, big players, who are always going to be gaining this market for their own personal advantage. And that's just a fact of the situation. It's whether it's ethical or moral, that's for other people to decide, but that's just a fact of what's happening. And so, yeah, that's what I think has been happening. And the one thing that I will say and how this could affect Bitcoin is that a lot of the reason we have so much indecision in Bitcoin, the times when you have the most peak fear, uncertainty, and doubt is when you enter an unprecedented event. And with scaling, this has been one of the main ones in Bitcoin, because we don't know if Bitcoin can scale. There's no precedent for whether we can get segregated witness in and things like this. So if Litecoin does adopt segregated witness, if you're an investor from the outside looking in, this sets a precedent that if you can successfully release this software into a platform, into production without major problems, then that, from an investor's perspective, will give them a lot more confidence in putting more money behind Bitcoin in anticipation that it's going to get activated on Bitcoin. So I think in terms of how it will affect Bitcoin, that's the main point, that we will then have some form of precedent that gives people confidence that it will work when applied to the Bitcoin network as well.
Yep, very, very true. Man, it's going to be so interesting to see. You know, it's so funny because this is like the main. Oh, somebody's got a phone ringing.
That sounds super old school.
Yeah. So,
hello,
like,
this is the president.
That wasn't
sorry.
phone
It's my phone. I've just muted. Sorry.
But yeah, no, you guys, like this is the main event of this year is segwit, right? Like we want to see if it gets activated on Litecoin and then Bitcoin, and you know we're gonna it's to me it's much better than any type of NFL type of thing going on at all. Like this is going to be really interesting to see how it plays out, and we'll definitely be, of course, be talking about it here on the show. So does anybody else have anything else to say on the Litecoin topic? No. All right. Well, I think we can move on to the next topic then, guys. We have over 200 people, 218 people watching us right now live in the audience. We got the chat. Go and give us a thumbs up. That helps us get into people's streams, get into people's homepages on YouTube. And if you could, please subscribe to the World Crypto Network channel, where we try to bring you as much crypto news as possible. We really appreciate it, guys. We love bringing you to the show. We love talking about Bitcoin. We're going to be moving on to the third and final topic here, which is going to be Bitcoin $500,000. Man, I wish. I tell you, I'm gonna have to sell my car for Bitcoin at some point and just use Uber. Here we go. So basically, we got Snapchat's first investor Jeremy Liu said in an interview with Business Insider that Bitcoin price can realistically reach $500,000 by 2030. And so I want to know from the panelists: is this price possible, and how will we eventually get to this price if it actually is possible? So, what do you think, Ricardo? $500,000.
Yeah. You know what? It's like, so I read that as well, and I was like, I mean, like, obviously he invested in Snapchat early on, so the guy is either extremely lucky or not entirely stupid. And I kind of think, like, logically, yes. 21 million coins, give or take, is not a very large number. And with the right amount of demand, yes, it can. The problem is that right now, the larger portion of demand that we're seeing is speculative demand. So it's people buying today because they think it will be worth more tomorrow. And a lot of investors are investing on a short, or speculators rather, are speculating on a very short timescale. And that's not a bad thing. It just means that what we might end up with is a plateau in prices or in price increase at some point. I'm not a trader. I've tried. I'm a really bad trader. I lose money. It's like gambling, and all those TA charts just go over my head. So, completely out of my scope of reference, but typically speaking, based on my understanding of the economics, I'd be skeptical if we could reach that price by within the time period that he says. But sure, I definitely think that Bitcoin could eventually reach that price.
Very interesting. Because we're talking 2030. I mean, that's a long time in Bitcoin years. I mean, at that point, Bitcoin should be, almost the world's financial system should be running over Bitcoin at that point, or close, I think, right, Ricardo? By 2030?
Yeah, so the other thing is, like, does it mean like $500,000 of today's currency? Because, the other thing that could happen is the dollar tanks, and then it's worth $500,000, like,
that's true.
because Trump took everyone to war or whatever.
Exactly. That's what Andreas always says, right? That's what Andreas always says, right? It's like Bitcoin is worth one Bitcoin. Always worth one Bitcoin. So yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see. So we'll go with Sam next on this. What do you think, Sam? You think we can get to $500,000, and how in the world will we do that?
How will we do that? Let's make a plan here. I think, sure, it's possible financially. The question is indeed, like Ricardo said, like, people invest, they speculate right now, and eventually at some point, if it would stagnate a lot, then some people might change their mind about it. So stagnation is not really going to help there. I think something really important to consider is that around 2026, we will have 20 out of the 21 million Bitcoins mined. So then it's really, and already before that, it's really going to kick in for people that it's going to stop, like the supply is going to really, really slow down. So that's definitely going to help the price a lot. 500,000 a lot? I don't really know. I'm not really sure. I don't really like speculating about it that much because, like, at the end of the day, we don't know it really. I think we should really focus on making it as useful and easy to onboard, etc., as possible, as secure as possible, and then the price will come by itself. And whether that's going to be 500,000 or 50,000 or 5 million, we'll see. But we should really focus on, like, keeping our heads down, like not focusing too much on going crazy with the price, and really making Bitcoin as beautiful as it can possibly be.
Yep, that's true. And, it really is easy to go down that route because there is only 21 million. I mean, and if you just look at like 1% of gold, right? What if only just 1% of gold got in? The price would be like 7,000 or some craziness. If just then maybe 1% of oil, and then maybe 1% of remittance. And of course, and if you add up all of that, well, then yeah, that's millions of dollars per Bitcoin, right? So it'd be interesting to see if Bitcoin can serve all of these use cases that that people might speculate that it can do. As a world reserve currency, it would have to be able to do that, right? So yep. So we'll see how it goes. We'll go see who we're going with next. We're gonna go with Renegade Investor Edward. What do you think about Bitcoin possibly hitting 500,000?
I could probably talk for like an hour on how bullish I am and all the reasons that could benefit Bitcoin going forward. And there's two main things to look at. There's sort of near-term reasons and then long-term reasons as well. And sort of, yeah, more micro, more macro. But let's take a look at some of the things that are going on right now. At the beginning of this year, I released a video called 10 Reasons Why Bitcoin Will Destroy All-Time Highs this year. And just to look at some of them, I mean, you got the war on cash, which is going global now as more governments try to clamp down on cash so they can gain more tax revenue because they're all in debt. They can't pay back their debt burdens. You've got institutional investment that's growing now as Bitcoin becomes more recognized as an asset class. The fact that Bitcoin, more than ever, especially when gold hit price parity, Bitcoin hit parity with gold, more people now view Bitcoin as a store of value, even though it's not up to gold's level yet. It hasn't got that 5,000 year history, but more and more people are definitely becoming open to that. Scaling, that's the biggest reason holding back the price right now. Once investors know that the network can scale, that is going to be such a huge boost for the price, because obviously the price of the network is based on the Metcalfe value of the network. Okay, so that's based on how many users, a square to the number of users of the network sort of equals the utility, and that's how Metcalfe value is measured. So the more you can scale, that's going to be majorly bullish. And then look what's happened in Japan recently. I mean, they've just added, I think, 126,000 places where they can accept Bitcoin. Their exchanges are now sort of overtaken Japan, even though some of them are no fee, so a bit of that volume is inflated. So you've got the whole East getting involved. Then you've got two other reasons. You've got the bond market, and this is more of a long-term one, okay? Actually, before we get to that, you've then got things like the Greece crisis that's going to come up. You've got growth in India. You've got the French sort of, if Le Pen gets in and takes France out of the EU, they're the second biggest member. That's going to create possibly a major crisis with the euro. So that's all those sort of reasons. Then you've got a really major one, and that's the bond market. We've been in a 35-year secular bond market in interest rates. And when this turns and interest rates start rising into record global debt, there's, I think, between 200 and 300% of debt, total global debt's GDP. When interest rates rise into that, the amount of problems this is going to cause for governments who will no longer be able to pay off the debt on the amount of sovereign debt they have is just going to be insane. I mean, that is going to be one of the main ones, and that's why I put it in my 10 reasons as well. But I also did another video on this, just looking at, in terms of the $500,000 figure, I mean, I think even that could be conservative by 2030. And the reason for that is I did a video on this, and I looked at the amount that's invested in total major global assets right now, and that amount is $365 trillion. You've got like 40 trillion in tradable residential real estate, 18 trillion tradable commercial real estate. You've got 10 trillion, about 10 trillion in gold, 70 trillion stock market, 200 trillion in bonds worldwide. So to reach that 500,000, I actually calculated that as my figure in one of my videos called Why Bitcoin Will Become the Only Game in Town. And only 5% of that 365 trillion will need to go into Bitcoin to take it to $500,000 per coin, or 430,000 pounds per coin. So you're only looking at a 5% capital transfer. And if you look at the main use case for Bitcoin right now, it's a store of value. And how much does is a normal recommendation for gold in people's portfolios is 5%. So that 500,000 is in line. If people took a 5% hedge against major global systemic issues with the legacy financial system, then we could easily get to 500,000. But then there are just so many different events. You've got the halving events as well to come in like 2020. And there are just so many reasons. And on top of that, you've got growing use cases. We don't even know how many use cases are going to come in the future, which are all going to drive demand for Bitcoin. So all in all, to get to that 500,000, we need a 5% wealth transfer out of all these different major global assets, which are, a lot of them are historically overvalued. And if interest rates rise, you're looking at 200 trillion coming out of bonds. You're looking at a major sell-off, or a portion of that anyway. And you're looking at a major sell-off in global real estate, which is 40 trillion. And that's obviously propped up by record low interest rates. So honestly, I think even that could be conservative if we can work out these short-term scaling issues and things like that.
Very true, very true. And I see Edward, you're absolutely super bullish on Bitcoin. So, you guys, if you guys are sick of Andreas videos, you guys got to check out Renegade Investor videos, because if you're ever feeling down on Bitcoin, like, I don't know if this thing's going to work, just watch his videos and listen to Edward. And I assure you, you will be reassured.
I just think some ideas in this world are too good. The internet was too good, and I think Bitcoin is one of those things. And that's not to say there aren't risks. Like, I'm not saying go out, chuck your entire house, sell your house,
come on.
and everything. But what I'm saying is just be sensible. It's high risk. I don't give financial advice, 1 to 5%. And the risk reward is so great. You do not need more than 1 to 5% of your capital right now. And that's a wise investment. I mean, the risk reward perspective is insane. So just be sensible with it, even though, the upside of this is whatever you can really imagine,
Exactly. Now, it is still, of course, early days. That's why we recommend only we don't recommend anything because we're not recommending financial advice. But, we tell our friends 1 to 3% or 1 to 5%, at the most you want to put in your portfolio at this point, because it is still early days. But, Bitcoin has been running perfectly for over 8 years straight. No single other financial system on the planet can claim the uptime that Bitcoin has had. 24/7, 365. A bunch of different exchanges, a bunch of different drama. As I mentioned in the earlier part of the show, Bitcoin's always about to die, and yet here we are, $1,200 a Bitcoin, a huge community, more and more people joining in, more and more people loving it. This is the way that this is great. I mean, and I talk to so many people, and for them it's just not about cheap transactions. It's about censorship resistance. It's about financial sovereignty. It's about exiting from fiat. Store of value, it's just everybody I talk to just does not care about cheap and fast transactions. So but we're going to get there too, because the demand is there. At one point, Bitcoin will be able to, maybe with Lightning, maybe without Lightning, but certainly something to do with payment channels more than likely. Bitcoin will be able to deliver the crazy Visa transaction stuff that some people want out of Bitcoin, but it definitely won't be on layer 1. So we'll see how it goes. And John, I know you tweeted this. You're like me, where we just hate this dichotomy of gold and cash. Like, Bitcoin is both. Like, it is something that we've never experienced before, and it will continue to evolve into something we can't even imagine 10 years from now, right? So it is going to be interesting to see, and the upside is clear. And but this is what attracts people like us, these really smart people. Ricardo, all of these really smart people are attracted to Bitcoin because of these possibilities, because of the possibility. It really is like being in the early days of the internet, but maybe even better, because now we have the internet itself to communicate, right? So now we can have things like these live freaking shows that we can talk about it on. We couldn't talk about this in the early days of the internet. It was all BBSs and physical meetups, so this has just been definitely a pleasure to be a part of the Bitcoin history by talking about Bitcoin here with you guys. So really awesome stuff. Does anybody else have anything they want to mention on this topic yet? No. Okay.
I just want to
go ahead.
Agree with what the previous commentators have said. Really, what's important for if Bitcoin's going to reach that price, and I think it's completely possible, but it's going to require a lot of on-chain scaling just to support the number of settlement transactions that are required to support those kinds of capital flows in and out of Bitcoin. Ideally, just between Bitcoin addresses. But what's really going to get Bitcoin to 500,000 is not like retail payments or everybody in the world buying coffee with Bitcoin. It's going to be like large settlement transactions between banks, businesses, and potentially even nation states. The same way that gold has been used historically. Companies and nation states are going to wise up, and they're going to realize that shipping around metric tons of gold is not really the most efficient way to settle their debts, and they're going to use Bitcoin instead. And they're going to have we're going to have public officials or appointed officials who are in control of Bitcoin multi-sig accounts, and just like activating a nuclear missile, they're all going to turn their keys at the same time and transfer hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin at a time to settle their national debts. And it's a really, just like gold, it's a really great politically neutral, really just product of nature and math, that doesn't come with a lot of the baggage that fiat comes along with. And so I think that's really what's going to push Bitcoin to $500,000 a coin, or potentially even higher. Now by 2030, I think that's a little bit aggressive. But anything could happen. It's certainly going to take a lot of volatility between now and then if it's really going to occur that fast. The same way that we saw Bitcoin spike to 1,200, drop down to 200. We're going to see waves like that come and go for the next couple of decades before it gets to 500,000. It's not just going to be a straight run up.
Absolutely. I mean, there is a lot of problems still to solve. There is a lot more bubbles still to happen. I mean, if anything, the halvings themselves will create huge bubbles. Even if we had a perfect like linear like up, as soon as we hit that halving, something's going to happen. Either like it's going to go straight up and then correct, and something's going to happen. It's built in something where it's going to be a lot more volatility before we finally even out. Because at $500,000 a coin, there's going to be little to no volatility at that point, right, John? I mean,
yeah, we're certainly not going to feel any volatility down at the $1,000 transaction size level. It might fluctuate by a few dollars a day, down at that level, but it getting there, it's going to be incredibly volatile, the price per coin. So
and at that point too, like it'll all be digital anyway. It'll all auto correct, be built into the wallet, be built into the software, right? I mean, if it goes up and down $1 or $2, that doesn't matter to the software, because the software always is getting the price real time, right?
Yeah,
for example, for retail people, like if they priced it in Bitcoin digitally, like they could just see the software that they would be using in theory at that point would be automatically calculating.
Yeah, I don't think. Bitcoin wallets might work the same. They might work differently. It's possible that most people will use Bitcoin wallets, kind of like Abra, that just hedge Bitcoin volatility against the price of like fiat currency, and people are just using Bitcoin as a settlement rail. But for the people that are holding Bitcoin, like, they're gonna experience the volatility going up and down the same way we have been since the very beginning. So I would just say, unless you're a day trader, just buy and hold and try not to pay too close attention to the price. Otherwise, you're gonna go crazy.
Exactly. I mean, like we always hear from people from other countries, right? Like they don't care that it goes up and down, right? Because it goes this, right? It goes up and down, but how it eventually ends up going up.
Yeah. I think Andreas likes to say, people in like Argentina and Venezuela, they love Bitcoin, and they don't mind the volatility because their currency, the volatility goes down, but with Bitcoin, the volatility goes up. So,
absolutely.
But
I love that
like
one
you
still.
said, don't put your life savings into it. Just put a small amount into it as a hedge against the insanity of governments and the corporatocracy that exists, and just enjoy the ride.
Exactly. Yep. Just hedge, just a little bit to hedge. There's nothing
buy
wrong
some
with that.
altcoins like Monero, things that coins that are doing interesting things. That
Don't do that. That Monero is a scam. Come on.
Freaking scams, man. They're everywhere.
You're first, guys. But no, like Bitcoin, there's nothing, there's no guarantees in Bitcoin, and so it could be an altcoin that ends up kind of being the one. I kind of subscribe to the theory that there's going to be one cryptocurrency that pretty much takes very dominant share of the market, like 95% or more of all of the liquidity in cryptocurrency. My personal opinion is it's going to be Bitcoin, but it's quite possible it could be another coin that's able to just
one coin.
It could be one coin. It's probably going to be one coin, right, John?
I hear one coin that are playing segwit.
There you go. I hear one coin is talking about segwit, so maybe we should pump one coin a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah. So I think it's good to have some money in alts, just kind of as a hedge against uncertainty in Bitcoin itself. So
yeah, absolutely. So I think cool. So does anybody else have anything to say on this? I think we can move on. If not,
I've got a few last comments. Right.
Okay, please go ahead.
So look, like Bitcoin, it could be the best performing asset we've ever seen, like pretty much unprecedented in history. But everyone has an individual risk portfolio. Okay, so if you're a millennial, I didn't give advice, but if you're a millennial, you may want to put in more than 1 to 5. If you're looking at all these overpriced assets like houses, stocks, bonds, then maybe you do want to put 50% of your portfolio in. And if your portfolio is say $2,000, but if you've just bought a house, you've got a kid on the way, you don't want to be putting a lot of money into Bitcoin because that'll put you at systemic risk. So everybody's got an individual risk portfolio. One of the best other tips, because there could be a lot of people listening right now who have just got into Bitcoin on the price rise. So the other good tip is scale in and scale out when you do. Don't just chuck everything in at once. It's called cost dollar averaging. Sometimes you might buy higher, sometimes you might buy lower. But one of the best things I ever learned was to scale in and scale out. And that can sometimes save you money and get you a better price. And don't put in more money than you want to lose. And the one other thing I will say, and this is one thing I'm seeing a lot right now, because I've been contacted by people who I've told about Bitcoin, and they're like, I'm thinking about putting a big investment into Ethereum or some of these alts. And I'm like, the first thing that people will do when they've made an initial investment into Bitcoin, they will think they can chuck money into any altcoin and get the same returns that Bitcoin has. And it does not work like that, okay? Now, I'm not saying that's impossible, but don't just take all your money that you've just put into Bitcoin into an altcoin that you've just bought that's gone up 500%, only for it to dump on you 80%. Okay, so just be sensible when you're putting money into alts. It should be a small fraction of the money that you have in Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, they represent basically exponentially more risk than even Bitcoin does. So, I mean, if you think Bitcoin has risk, well, look how far it is. Only 8 years. Imagine when some of these altcoins start hitting the 8-year mark, right? Like Ethereum and maybe even Monero. Like, who knows what will happen to them if they can scale or not. We'll definitely have to see. Monero, of course, has gone from $1 all the way up to $20. So we're all trying to maybe get a ride on Monero on Fluffy Pony's private jet, but we shall see what happens. So I guess does anybody else have anything on this topic?
Yeah, we're going to see those kind of graphs where you have them now, the comparisons between startup, like from 0 to unicorn status. We're going to have that with cryptocurrencies too, probably. Like fastest to $1 billion market cap. Like it's going to drop over the years, like how fast it's going to be. Yeah.
Yep. Because there's definitely been some coins that have hit, $100 million, even $1 billion market caps that are no longer there, So, but even LiteCoin hit $50 at one point. So it's kind of crazy stuff back in 2013. Feels like 2013 again. But so normally I try to interview the special guest a little bit in the beginning, but I actually kind of didn't really do that today for whatever reason. I don't know. We're live here, so who knows what the hell can happen. But I think I'd like to talk a little bit to Ricardo since the guests have some time, and just talk a little bit about the Monero project and stuff and how he got into Bitcoin. I know that some guests, the panelists, have a few questions as well. So first, Ricardo, just really quick, like how did you originally get into Bitcoin and how did you eventually migrate over to the Monero project, if you can, just in a few minutes?
Sure. So I got into Bitcoin early 2011. Initially, I didn't pay. I sort of paid a little bit of attention, but didn't really care that much about it. And towards the middle of 2011, I started getting a little more heavily involved. I had a little bit more free time. And my wife and I moved down the Garden Route, which is this sort of strip along the southern coast of South Africa. And we initially moved down because we had an import-export company that was quite successful. And so we wanted to open ourselves up to relaxing, which didn't happen. But it gave me opportunity to explore Bitcoin. And I really liked what I saw, primarily because it did something that I thought was not possible. It created a consensus network where everyone was incentivized to follow the rules because money was involved. And that kind of blew my mind. And so I sort of latched on to that aspect of it. And I went through the normal route. I guess a lot of people do this. I was like, mining. Mining is the future. I'm just going to make millions from mining. And mine. Didn't make millions from mining. Spent way more on Butterfly Labs than, than anyone really should. And, I dabbled in a bunch of stuff. Bought a bunch of like altcoins as they launched. So before LiteCoin even, there was Tenebricks, and I decided that Tenebricks was going to definitely be the future. And so I managed to buy some Tenebricks off a miner, and that didn't work out so well. So I bought some Fairbricks off a miner, and I still have my Tenebricks and my Fairbricks wallets. And then I bought some Litecoin. So, at least I made up for it. But at any rate, that's sort of my introduction. Eventually, long after that, in early 2014, when Monero was launched, I started mining it in day one. It was reasonably interesting, but the main reason I mined it was oh, cool, I'm going to mine this and dump it on the exchange when it invariably hits the exchange. And I ended up liking it. After dumping a bunch on the exchange, because, it hit the exchange, which was Poloniex at the time. And I ended up really liking the concepts, the ideas, the fact that it wasn't based on Bitcoin's code, the fact that it used a different EC curve. All of these were things that appealed to me. And so I ended up getting really involved. And I was part of the core team, the 7 members of the core team that forked Monero away from Thankful for Today, when he ended up being a gigantic douchebag. And yeah, I've been involved ever since. And right now I'm the lead maintainer of Monero. And I advocate for Monero usage quite often, but I do not advocate for Monero investment, because I think that, Bitcoin is already as it stands, Bitcoin is something that could dissipate and disappear tomorrow. So you must imagine an altcoin has got an even greater likelihood of that happening. But I definitely do advocate for Monero as a thing to use today if you want to enhance your privacy.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think a lot of people are finding it interesting just because the main reason, like you said, it wasn't actual coins out there. It definitely the one, at least one of the only ones that people know about that isn't actually forked from Bitcoin. So that's really cool. And I'd like to get some panelists to ask some questions. So I think first we'll go with John, and then we'll go with Sam. I believe they both have some questions too. And then if Renegade, if you have a question too, you can go after that. So first we'll go with John. What are some of the questions you had for Ricardo?
Yeah, I have a few questions about development. So earlier this year, Monero implemented this feature called ring confidential transactions, which I believe was a hard fork. And so the first couple of questions I have is how is ring confidential transactions working out on the live network? And second, how, what did it take to pull off a successful hard fork? There's a lot of anxiety, at least in Bitcoin, around doing hard forks. So how is the process of doing that?
So Ring CT is working out very well. It's optional right now, but once you go Ring CT, you never go back, because all your outputs are Ring CT, and you can't undo that process. So pretty much the vast majority of transactions are Ring CT. From September, there will be the only transactions allowed on the network. So you won't be able to do non-Ring CT transactions. In terms of how it's working out in general, so one of the things that we didn't really think through was the increased transaction size. We knew that there was an increased transaction size. We sort of prepared for it in many ways. One thing we didn't prepare for was the impact that would have on the dynamic block limiter. And so the dynamic block limiter has been unable to grow as rapidly as it should. And so we've had periods where we've had thousands of transactions in the mempool, which is unheard of for Monero. 6 months ago, the mempool was like 0 transactions, even under heavy load. And now we have this situation where, clearing the mempool can take several days. And that's been kind of like, it's not been disconcerting. It's just been, I think, annoying to some people. It's definitely been annoying to anyone who has to help with, with new users and newcomers who are struggling to use Monero, which is, of course, the thing that we try and want people to do. And so we've got a hard fork coming up now again on April the 15th. It's considered an emergency hard fork because its main role is to fix this problem with the dynamic block size limit and the mempool backlog that we're seeing. Moving forward, sort of beyond that, to sort of touch on what does it take to pull off a successful hard fork. Monero is kind of different to Bitcoin because we have a hard fork culture. And so we hard fork every 6 months. There are a number of reasons for this. One of the main reasons is Monero is very new. It's very, in a sense, it's unstable, like from a code perspective. And so we might make a change that if we implement it as a soft fork and we try to retain some sense of backward compatibility, would be very difficult, and we would probably end up forking the network. So we're just not mature enough to do that. So it's much easier for us to just hard fork. And so it means that, we've now dropped support for this backend database. No problem. If you want that backend database, well, after 6 months, it's no longer supported, or after a year, if you're sort of way behind. So from that perspective, it just allows us to move a little bit quicker. We aren't going to be able to do this forever. We are going to move to 1 year hard forks when it becomes significantly harder to push for 6 months. And after that, we'll probably move to 2 year hard forks and so on. But at the moment, we're able to hard fork every 6 months. At the same time, an interesting thing that happened with RingCT was, it's honestly, if there was ever a hard fork that is not controversial at all, it's RingCT. It's like, well, look, Monero previously was able to obscure where transactions are going to, or really hide them like it was encrypted. It was able to obscure where transactions are coming from, but the amount was visible, although it was semi-obscured. And now there's this thing called RingCT that obscures the amount. I mean, if ever there was a thing that was just like completely not controversial, it would be that. And yet, post-hard fork, not pre-hard fork, post-hard fork, we had 2 or 3 people on Reddit complain, oh, the transaction size has increased. Oh, this is terrible. How could you guys just do this? And it's like, well, we've spoken about it for like a year and a half. How did you not pay attention? And it's like seriously not controversial at all. And the lesson for me was if a non-controversial hard fork with Monero had pushback, even if it's only from 3 people, it's impossible to imagine any hard fork with 0 pushback. There's always going to be pushback. All you can do is hope that and trust that the path you've laid and the discussions that you've had with the public and your users in general has established that this hard fork is net positive and that most people are going to be okay with it. But there is always the possibility you're going to have a couple of morons that'll be like, oh, the transaction size increased. This is terrible.
Yeah,
what are you going to do?
Those people's opinions probably don't matter so much in the long run unless they're like serious whales. But they're probably not going to come to you on Reddit to discuss this. So that said, did it require a lot of backroom coordination with the exchanges and the miners to make sure that they all upgraded their software on time, or was it more straightforward than that?
Did you guys discuss this on a Monero Dragon's Den?
So we have a secret Slack channel. And it's obviously not called Dragon's Den. It's called Tiger Cave. No. So yeah, we don't have a secret channel. Well, I mean, there are secret channels, but just none that discuss this stuff. I mean, we're too busy discussing our OneCoin pump, you know. But seriously, like with this thing, I mean, with the way our hard forks go, we don't have voting in our hard forks, and that's obviously it's actually a little bit similar to a user activated soft fork in terms of economically sensitive nodes upgrade, and if miners don't upgrade, they're left behind. So we have a flag day, and we tend to, I'm hesitant to use the word canvas, but we tend to talk to the economically sensitive nodes first. So Shapeshift, Poloniex, Bitfinex, Kraken. You know, we talk to these guys, and we're like, look, this is the fork that's coming up in 6 months. This is what it's going to have. Is that okay? What do you guys feel like? How do you guys feel about this? Typically, if they're okay with it, and obviously this is post the process of discussing it as a community. You know, we now as a community have decided that we want this. Now we go to the economically sensitive nodes. The economically sensitive nodes, by and large, will say yes, of course. You know, Ring say, oh, yeah, hide the amount. Obviously, it makes sense. And then we set up a post on Reddit that has a table of all the mining pools, and we go canvas mining pools, and we say, look, this is the hard fork we're doing. This is the date that it's happening. Have you upgraded? And mining pools have to say yes or no. Sometimes we'll be able to tell because the block version will increase, but with like the hard fork coming up now, the block version doesn't increase. So, the block version does, but it doesn't increase until the flag act or the hard fork flag date. So we sort of like discuss it with mining pools up front. And we sort of like get this buy-in from them, but we also have this table on Reddit. And if you are a miner and you're mining on a pool and your pool hasn't upgraded, and now it's like 2 days before the hard fork, what are you going to do? You're going to switch to another pool that has. I mean, why would you continue with a pool that hasn't when clearly most of the pools have upgraded already? So that's been kind of useful, or not kind of, it's been very useful. And also having this like flag day where economically sensitive nodes have already bought into the idea and have already upgraded helps a lot as well, because it means worst case scenario, absolute worst case, we're dropping 2 or 3 pools off and they're like left behind, but who cares? You know, our difficulty adjusts every block. So difficulty will just take a tumble and the network will continue. And that's been sort of the approach we've taken. And so far, so good. Let's hope it continues that way and we don't end up like Ethereum, where we clink the champagne glasses and next minute there's Monero Classic.
Oh my god, that was so funny, dude. How they tweeted out all those successful pictures, and then the next day, boom. Interesting. So very cool. John, did you have any other questions for him, or anything to apply that?
I guess 2 more. So actually, I didn't know that there was like a dynamic block size limit in Monero. So I guess one of the questions I have is, you know, is there an actual or theoretical block size limit? And if so, like, you know, how do you see that affecting, say, centralization of mining nodes or even, you know, full nodes in the network? Is, you know, in Bitcoin we're very averse to increasing the block size limit due to centralization concerns. So you know, has that been a concern in Monero, either in reality or in theory?
So yeah, I mean, it's obviously a concern. One of the things that we've done to try and prevent that is make the resizer quite conservative. Miners get punished if they create bigger blocks. So and they get punished by losing block reward. So there's going to be a proportional number of miners who will only grow the block reward by a very, very small amount, grow the block size limit by a very, very small amount, where the amount of block reward they lose is tiny. It's inconsequential. So you end up with that balance where, or hopefully you end up with that balance where the block limit grows based on actual demand. The other thing is the block size limit shrinks as well. So you can have a demand pump during something like Black Friday. You know, there's massive mempool backlog. Everyone's trying to buy their Ferraris using Monero and their drugs and their tax evasion. And it's Black Friday where tax evasion is 50% off. And so everyone's like, and cocaine is also 30% off. And now there's this massive mempool backlog. So what happens? The block size limit increases very, very slowly over a period. And then it's no longer Black Friday or that weekend. And so the block size limit comes back down to some median. And so by doing that, you end up with like, with a scenario where attacking it becomes expensive because a miner can attack it if he has a significant portion of the hash rate. Let's say he has 35%. So he can attack it, and he continuously builds big blocks, and he doesn't care about the punishment that much because he's not paying fees for all his transactions that he's stuffing in. But ultimately, he's going to lose out because he's never going to be able to keep that balance high enough to grow the block size for a sufficiently long period of time. It's always going to come back down when demand crashes. And there will always be periods of heightened demand and then, you know, later on periods of like less heightened demand. So I sort of think there's a reasonable balance with that. Obviously, there's a risk in future that basically we might end up with a scenario where the block size limit outgrows and outstrips the Monero price. And there's this weird balance between the two, because it might end up being, in that scenario, it might end up being economically viable to just have massive blocks, have everything scaling on chain, and just run Monero nodes in data centers. But I mean, the price would have to be like high enough versus the block reward versus the block size limits for that to happen. And right now the balance is sort of okay. So, you know, and obviously we're watching it and monitoring it. And if we feel that in the future it's tending towards creating blocks that are so large that somebody like me who lives in South Africa in the back end of nowhere can no longer run a full node, well, you know, now it's time to just sort of put the brakes on that and make the algorithm a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, see, this is real quick, John. I just want to say, like, this is why Monero is one of the projects that I love, because even though I'm like a Bitcoin maximalist, right? Like, I love all the science you guys are doing over there and all the experimentation, you know, that can, all the stuff that can be learned just from the things that you just said about block size. Like, that's just one aspect that Bitcoin could benefit from that you guys are experimenting with. I mean, just one out of so many. And so I just love that. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, you know, is there a concept of like SPV in Monero?
No. SPV is impossible because you can never tell if a transaction, an output is truly spent or not. It may be included in multiple inputs or multiple ring signatures in multiple transactions. So you know, that sort of lack of a UTXO set, but having a TXO set instead already kills SPV. We do have some stuff we're doing for lightweight wallets on phones and that, but most of it revolves around you running a full node at home, and then that full node at home doing the scanning of outputs for you, and then your node connects to your phone connects to your node at home.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's sort of like it's super lightweight from your phone's perspective, but it means that you have to run a full node. And there's no way to work around that, at least not as we understand it right now. Maybe in future, someone will be like, yeah, it's this amazing thing that I've just invented. But
I mean, that's what's beautiful, Ricardo, right? Like, that's what's beautiful. Like, when you have these open source projects, you have these insanely, amazingly cool solutions just kind of organically present themselves, right? And I have no doubt that if there is enough value and demand, somebody's going to pop out of the freaking woodwork one day, Ricardo, freaking send you an email and be like, this is how you do it. And you're gonna be like, hell yes, because you know this is beautiful. This is why we love open source. You know, and that brings me just to a bit of a topic of like all of these you know, using Bitcoin and Monero and all these other projects. Like, you know, just having all this criticism, but yet having, you know, no say in the having no contributions to the development, no contributions to the actual creation of this coin. They're just like you said, Ricardo, some guy on Reddit is just like, why did you guys increase the size so much? Why did you guys, like you said, this has been dealt with for a year and a half. Everybody who is in the know knows. And so it's just funny to me that all these companies don't give more credit and, to the developers like yourself and to the people who, even to Bitcoin Core, to the people who are creating this, the vast majority just have nothing but criticism. And so I think it's important to mention that, you guys are solving some freaking difficult problems, and it's really interesting science to see. So awesome.
A lot of armchair quarterbacks in crypto for sure. So last question for you, Ricardo. What's on the near-term development roadmap for Monero? What's going on this year?
Yeah, so I mean, there's lots of stuff. Okay, like we've just discussed, Monero is an open source project, so there's lots of stuff I'd like to see done that probably won't be done until like 2020. But it's sort of, we have a vague idea of where we're going. Some of the stuff is really like, it's only interesting to developers, and it's only interesting to developers that are involved in the project. There's lots of like, let's refactor this out into a library. Let's build this out as a this, and let's build it out as a that. But in terms of stuff that's more tangible, that people can actually play with over the next quarter, 8-9 months, the GUI has hit beta 2, and we're expecting the Monero core GUI to hit either beta 3 or a final release within the next few months. The people that have been working on that have done a really good job of building out a graphical interface to work with Monero that looks absolutely nothing like most of the crummy sort of Windows 95-ish Qt projects that we've seen. It looks really pretty, and which of course presents a challenge on some operating systems, but so far we've got pretty broad support, and in fact they've got it working on Android and on iOS. So when the official GUI works on Android and iOS, and you can run a full node on your phone, that's pretty powerful. And that's kind of one of the things that I'm expecting us to wrap up within the next sort of 6 to 9 months, is that you will actually have a distribution you can download onto your phone, run on your phone as a full node, even if you limit the number of peers it connects to, and you'll be able to sort of use that as a extremely secure, extremely private wallet on the go. Over and above that, one of the areas of concentration has been an improvement in merchant tools. So we've been switching away from JSON RPC to a JSON RPC sort of interface between the daemon and the wallet miner / whatever clients to 0MQ. And that's been a work in progress since last year already. And that's starting to reach a point where it's going to start replacing the JSON RPC API, which is not exciting for most people, but exciting for us because of the amount of effort that's gone into it. And just sort of over and above that, the September hard fork will make RingCT the only valid transaction, and will also introduce a set number of ring sizes for ring signatures. So we'll see an increase in the ring signature size, because we're also working on a decrease in the transaction size by fiddling around with range proofs, and by changing some of the way we do range proofs with RingCT. So these are all, I guess, they're very underlying stuff. It's not something that it's not like, oh, and then we're going to launch a new Genesis block and double everyone's coins. But it's stuff that excites me, because it means that Monero is more efficient, more secure, more stable, and ultimately a more useful currency for everyone.
As a web developer, the main thing that caught my ear there was the JSON RPC API. So that you said you guys are coming out with that?
No, we're deprecating that in favor of 0MQ.
Okay. So
always
interactive.
The wallet will always support JSON RPC API. So as a web developer, you'll always be able to do wallet interactions.
Oh, okay.
But, if you wanted to do interact with the daemon, for example, and get like whatever network stats, you either have to go through a stub, or you have to pull in a 0MQ library and then interact with the daemon directly.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So pretty much kind of run your own full node to get that stuff, right?
Well, not even. I mean, it's just literally all 0MQ is just, it's just going from like an RPC interface, which is, you know, more for like, you know, you send a command, you get a response back. Whereas 0MQ is IPC, so it's interprocess, and it's more for like, I want to subscribe to a notification every time there's a new block. Just send, when there's a new block, send me a new block. Oh, there's a new transaction in the mempool. I want to know about that. So you can have pub sub, you know, sort of publish, subscribe interactions with the daemon, and all sorts of cool stuff like that. And then obviously we've got pub sub on the wallets as well. So you can do stuff like, here's my Monero wallet as a web application. Here's my Monero wallet. I want to know only when I get a new transaction. I don't care. Don't tell me anything before. Like, I don't want to poll you. I don't want to ping you. Just, I'm going to ignore you. But, oh, there's a new transaction. Just give it to me. So that sort of interface means it's a lot more powerful for web developers because they can write much cleaner classes where they're only caring about things when they receive them.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. I think Sam had a question or two as well, and then we'll go with Renegade's questions.
Yeah, pretty brief, actually. I think Ricardo answered most of it there. I was just wondering, like, sort of about the miner politics, because we have them in Bitcoin now. We didn't as much in the first few years. But you pretty much explained, like, individual miners will just switch pools a lot more rapidly, which is something I feel like we're not really seeing that much in Bitcoin these days. I feel like a lot of people are just letting it run and not really focusing that much on the politics, maybe. But do you foresee any difficulties there in the future where doing these hard forks, you already mentioned it, like it might become harder in the future? And to add on to that, I think your private secret Slack channel should be called the Pony Ranch. But that's a
Pony Ranch. Hashtag Pony Ranch. Get it trending. Get that shit trending, people. Hashtag Pony Ranch.
Okay, well, you know, I mean, that clearly that's like, I'm never gonna live that one down. That's gonna be a thing.
Yeah, you're right.
Look, I guess in terms of minor politics, so having this sort of like flag day activation has initially we tried to do like, you know, minor voting. The problem was we didn't have enough time to write the code. So well, let me rephrase that. We wrote the code, and then we scrapped the code because there were so many edge cases. You know, what happens if you end up on a fork and then you have to, like, you know, suddenly the miners stop voting for it and they go back to a previous version. There's like all the stuff you've got to consider. And so we decided, you know what, let's just keep it simple. We'll do flag day activation. And it's flag day and the economically sensitive nodes have upgraded. And if you're a miner and you haven't, sorry for you. In hindsight, it's actually been beneficial because it means that we deal with less minor politics. You know, we've had, like, last hard fork, there were 2 mining pools, and the hard fork happened, and then they woke up, and they were like, "Oh, we're mining blocks, and we're not getting the reward. No one can spend the reward," and we're like, "Yes, because you're the only idiots that aren't caught up with the rest of the network." And so they sort of, like, you know, had to, like, wake up very quickly and upgrade. And I mean, that's fine for the moment. I think moving forward, we'll probably do like the table that we have on Reddit right now. We'd probably do that over a longer period. We do it like over, say, 6 months. And of course, right now it's like we tend to do it like a month before. But let's say we did it over 6 months, and, you know, for a 6-month period, miners know that, you know, they've, like, these are the pools that have already upgraded. And you know, these are the, I mean, all the economically sensitive nodes have upgraded, or at least most of them. They now, the onus is on them to go, well, we are going to upgrade because of X, you know, because we don't want to be left behind, because we might be of the minority right now from a mining perspective, but the economically sensitive nodes are the ones that are important. And if you look at segwit as an interesting example, who are the economically sensitive nodes that oppose segwit? I mean, they're precious few. You could maybe argue that blockchain.info opposed segwit for a period of time. But beyond that, there wasn't really anyone else. Most of the economically sensitive nodes, tools like Electrum and centralized systems like BitPay and so on, they were all like, cool, segwit, no problem, we're there. The issue with the miners. But now what if you only had, like, let's imagine a worst case scenario. You had 30% of the miners. They supported segwit. You have 85% of the wallets and economically sensitive nodes supporting segwit. What would you do then? Well, if you had a flag day, you would just, that would be the day that segwit activates. And, like all those miners that aren't supporting segwit would be like, oh dear, we're now like off on our own tangent. And if we want to like actually get our stuff sold, we have to get on the train that has segwit activated. And that's sort of what we're trying to encourage is, here's a flag day, here's the thing that we're doing, here are the economically sensitive nodes that support it, and here's the group of miners that support it. If you're part of the group of miners that don't, you're going to lose out. And that's kind of all we can do. And it's really like a community-driven thing. It's it's nothing sort of that us as Monero contributors or developers can do. It's the community as a whole that are pushing for this.
Very interesting. Sam, did you have anything follow up with that or no?
Nope, that's it. Thanks very much.
Very cool. We'll go with Renegade Edward. Did you have any questions for Ricardo?
Yeah, just the one which I've been wondering about with sort of privacy coins for a while. And that's like, at the moment, we're seeing a big ramp up in the war on cash from governments trying to essentially eliminate private transactions so they can collect as much tax revenue as possible. And I don't really agree with that. I think citizens should be able to make private transactions. And I think in the long run, it's going to be inevitable. But I was just wondering, with governments in this position, what risk does Monero and sort of these private coins have in becoming a target for government intervention, especially in the short term when perhaps Monero doesn't have the network effect that Bitcoin has? And because I think if you can reassure investors of that, that'd be really bullish for Monero to sort of put investors at ease of sort of the risk of that.
Look, with any cryptocurrency, you stand the risk of some government or all governments saying, oh, this is just deathly illegal and everyone needs to stop using it. And in fact, I think that governments would actually not even face that much of a challenge doing so, because all they need to do is make an example of a few people in their country who are using that particular cryptocurrency, or a few companies or whatever. At the same time, a cryptocurrency is largely useless unless it is tamper resistant and decentralized and cannot be shut down. And so those are the principles that we're trying to continuously reinforce with Monero. And so that means that we're doing things like we're integrating I2P. We have an entire separate project within the Monero project umbrella called Carvery, and it is an I2P router, but written in C++. And I2P, for those that don't know, is a hidden services network like Tor and like Freenet. It's the second biggest hidden services network, once you sort of get past Tor, which is the biggest. And there are a number of reasons why we've chosen to support I2P. One of them being that every single participant in the I2P network is also a router, whereas with Tor, only a sort of smaller group are routers, the rest are just clients. But we've got our own I2P implementation in C++, so there's no Java requirement. We're a few months away still from an alpha release, but there's a whole separate group of contributors and some contributor overlap on that. And our aim is to just continue to provide the technology and the software to allow Monero to be run in adversarial environments. And if Monero can be run in an adversarial environment and in an environment that's less adversarial, then what can anyone really do to shut it down? I mean, they can, I can get hit by a bus completely, unrelated and accidentally, but it's not going to stop Monero from progressing. It's not going to stop the dev meetings from happening every 2 weeks. It's not going to stop contributors from contributing. So really, we're already in a scenario where Monero is effectively unstoppable. And all that you can do from here is just make it painful to use Monero, which is much harder than anyone thinks, thanks to projects like BitSquare.
Yeah, very true. Very true. So I have, Renegade, did you have anything to follow up on that?
No, just say thank you, and yeah, thanks for answering all these questions.
Yeah, very cool. I have one final question for you, Ricardo. So not to paint like a dark shadow over it, but obviously because it is so private and secure, right? I got to ask, like, what do you think percentage of the dark market is Monero having right now? Like, what, like, if you had to put a percentage on it and guess, like, how much of the dark market do you think Monero is actually being used for right now?
I'm pretty sure. I'm certain it's very small. The only sort of real stat I have is that Alphabay told Carl Torpe that Alphabay does 2% of their transactions in Monero, and that was a few months ago. Well, a couple of months ago. But at that point in time, it had already grown from 1% to 2%. So I would imagine at this point in time, maybe it's gone up to 4%, 3 or 4%.
Yeah,
I can't imagine it's very
right.
much been.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Maybe 3 to 5%, right? Tops.
Yeah, and that's only Alphabay. There's, the other dark markets don't support Monero, so we're talking about 1% of a single dark market, a darknet market. At the same time, the fact that it exists at all and that it's there and that it's being used and is useful to people is significant to me, because it means that there's a thing I worked on that people actually find useful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that, and yeah, the reason why I brought it up is because, like, Monero is going to need us, and so it just seems like that's the most obvious first case use scenario for it, since that was the first case use scenario for Bitcoin as well, right?
Yeah, and I mean, we're already seeing I joke about how Monero is going to go from darknet markets to ransomware, to whatever. But the reality is that is what's going to happen, and we're already seeing movements in the ransomware space to that direction. I think the only thing holding them back is that it's not that easy to buy Monero for fiat currency versus buying Bitcoin for fiat currency.
That's true.
Obviously, there's a desire amongst criminals for privacy.
That's a real good point.
I mean, I can understand why they want privacy. At the same time, I don't think that they can go very long without getting caught through old-fashioned police work. But I mean, at least they're those are our early adopters. Those are the people that we're protecting by protecting everyone else.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point about the fiat part, because it's going to be interesting, to see how fast the ransomware projects adopt Monero once you can get it for dollars. Like, that's going to be interesting to see, because once you can get Monero for dollars really instantly, well, then shit, I don't see why all the ransomware wouldn't switch a percentage of their stuff to Monero, be or just give them the option, right? Either this much in Bitcoin, this much in Monero.
Yeah. Well, Shapeshift also makes it pretty easy to change between Bitcoin and Monero or other altcoins. So if you kind of think of Bitcoin as the unit of account for altcoins, then it's pretty easy to go from Coinbase to Shapeshift to Monero to any other coin. So
absolutely, that's a good point too, John.
The bridges between Bitcoin and altcoins are getting wide. The lanes are getting wider, and the trains are moving faster. So
absolutely.
It's not that much of a leap nowadays.
What happens then, John, when we have Lightning connecting all these coins, right? Where you can do atomic transactions from Litecoin to Bitcoin to Monero, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of really exciting stuff coming, and the playing field is getting more level all of the time, and we're going to start to see true free market competition between these coins based on strictly fundamentals.
Yeah, I think that's an important point too, is that the moon, right? The moon moonful speed transactions, complete, anonymous and all of that stuff, right? Like that's the moon. And we're going to get there at some point, but I think we can't get there with Bitcoin alone. We're going to need, other things like Monero and stuff like that in order to create this utopia of the moon that everybody dreams of, which is just the whole world being able to transact instantaneously with censorship resistant, no third party kind of stuff. So, that's going to be interesting to see because it's looking like we're going to need more and more than just Bitcoin. But Bitcoin, of course, is going to be the reserve. That's what we're going to need to store everything. And so, because we have to have something to store in, right? And so that's the only other digital option. That's the only other digital gold option that we have right now. So be very interesting to see what happens in the future. So awesome show, guys. Thanks so much, for joining. I so much appreciate everybody here. We had some great discussion. Really happy. We had over almost 300 people at one point at the height of the show. So really glad that everybody tuned in. Before we close, if everybody could just give us a thumbs up and share out the show, let everybody know that we were here talking Bitcoin. That'd be great. We really appreciate it. We're just gonna go down the panelists one by one. First, John, where can we find you, man?
Yeah, so you can find my website, lightco.in. That's lightco.in. You have links to all my contacts. I'm LiteCoin on Twitter, LiteCoin on Mastodon.social, and LiteCoin.id on the Blockstack network. But yeah, if you want to find my website, lightco.in.
So just a lot of Litecoin stuff, people. Just search for Litecoin with LIGHT, and you will find this, man. There you go. Absolutely. Investor Edward, where can we find you? And maybe if you could just briefly talk a little bit about your new video and what can we expect from that, because I think that's coming out soon.
Yeah, so you can find me at renegadeinvestor.co.uk. That's where I put all my content, and I also use it as sort of aggregation for some of the best content in the Bitcoin space. You can also, I've also got a YouTube channel link from there, which is doing quite well, and you can find me on Twitter at SharkyBit. With regards to my video, I created a sort of like mini Bitcoin documentary that explains 106 years of monetary history and the creation of Bitcoin and why it's important, based on the Terminator 2 film. And at the weekend is the first time I showed it at CoinFest UK, which is a Bitcoin festival up in Manchester, and it was absolutely brilliant, really well arranged by Adam. And I recommend that if you're in the UK, definitely look it up for next year. And I showed it to about 50 people there, and they absolutely loved it, which makes me even more sort of keen to get it out onto YouTube because they really loved it. And so what I'm doing now is at the moment it's been blocked on copyright on YouTube, so I'm going to possibly look at getting it out on a different video platform. My other choice is to re-edit some of the longer video scenes or clips of Terminator with a storyboard, but it's been a real pain because it took 300 hours to make, so I'm really keen for people to see it. But I'll play around with some new platforms, and hopefully I'll get that out soon.
Awesome, man. We're looking forward to it. We're always looking forward to the next Renegade Investor video. You guys got to
one last thing.
Yep.
I just put up a video as well called Bitcoin Real-Time Justice and Restitution, which explains how Bitcoin's holding sort of government central banks, inept central planners accountable every day in real time. There's no in real time. So check that one out as well. And it's a good video.
Bitcoin's the gangster in the financial world, people. It is the gangster. All right. Sam, where can we find you, man?
Sure, yeah. You can find me on Twitter at SDWouters, one way to look up with me. And another thing I recently launched somewhere last month was bitcoinsnippets.com, which is a site where I try to sort of create an archive of all the interesting things that happened in Bitcoin over the years. So basically try to take like 1 to 3 highlights per day, put those in an overview of like a month, and then you can see like, okay, well, in November 2016, what kind of stuff happened in Bitcoin, like in a glance, where you can quickly go through it. It's quite a bit of work. So right now, like the furthest back I am is November 2016, because I launched this in January 2017, so started this year. But I'll eventually get back to like all the way to wherever people first started talking about Bitcoin, and eventually the white paper, of course. But that way, like over the years, it's going to be quite a nice archive, I think, where people can look back and see when what happened. So that's one way, bitcoinsnippets.com.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. See, this is what proves the point. There's always somebody watching Bitcoin. I mean, there's, You think you're going to get away with something? No, there are people on Reddit. There are people all over the world watching this network, watching every little thing and archiving it. And it's just great how the community, you know, how Bitcoin is so self-healing with the community. Like the community will just come in and correct and help. So, you know, people a lot of times talk about the Civil War and all this kind of crap, but at the end of the day, no, Bitcoin. We're all working on the same thing. Yeah, we disagree on a few things, but you know, it's we're all here working towards the same goals, all working on Bitcoin, all coming together in this cryptocurrency renaissance. So you know, I love the community. It's been a great time. We love all the people who watch this show, all the fans of this show, and we love to have a conversation with it. So you know, I just love it. So Ricardo, man, Fluffy Pony. Where can we find you and this amazing project that is called
In the Pony Ranch?
In the Pony Ranch. And the Pony Ranch. Where can we find you besides the Pony Ranch, Ricardo?
So I'm on Twitter. I'm Fluffy Pony ZA on Twitter. If you are American, I'm Fluffy Pony ZA. And, you know, I switch alternately between Z and Z. Beyond that, getmonero.org. We're also we're all over the place, but Reddit is kind of a nice resource. Reddit/r/Monero. And then beyond that, I've got a payment gateway that we're busy building out, or that we built out and we're busy making even better, to allow merchants and freelancers to accept Bitcoin, Monero, a bunch of scam coins, credit cards, PayPal, fiat, and then be settled in Bitcoin and Monero and maybe possibly also fiat. But yeah, that's kind of cool. I mean, if you're a freelancer or a merchant and you don't have a bank account, but you want to accept credit cards, speak to us. And awesome. That's about it. Thanks very much for having me.
Awesome. Thanks to the panelists so much for joining us, you guys. I really appreciate the time. Thanks to everybody in the chat, and you know, definitely make sure to give us some comments, give us some likes, because we only do the show every other week, so we definitely like to keep up with everybody in the comments. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter @the1vortex. I tweet fairly often about Bitcoin, and so it should be a good time. So thanks again, guys. So until Bitcoin hits $500,000 a coin, I guess we'll see you guys next time, and keep talking Bitcoin. See you guys later.